It's 5 p.m. here in Lagos, Nigeria. Time for the world today. I'm Amarachi Ubani. Here's what's coming up on the program. U.S. President-elect Donald Trump arrives in Washington ahead of his meeting with President Joe Biden. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken says North Korea's involvement in Ukraine will get firm response. Wow. A history professor at Cambridge University says appointment of the next Archbishop of Canterbury could take months. Let's begin the world today. U.S. President-elect Donald Trump has arrived in Washington ahead of his meeting with President Joe Biden. Trump is expected to make two stops today. First, visiting the Republicans on Capitol Hill and then meeting with the outgoing president at the White House. In the meantime, incoming First Lady Melania Trump has turned down an invitation from First Lady Jill Biden to the White House. Her office said on X, Mrs. Trump will not be attending today's meeting at the White House. Her husband's return to the Oval Office to commence the transition process is encouraging, and she wishes him great success. The meeting between Biden and Trump is part of a ceremonial tradition meant to signal the desire for a smooth and peaceful transfer of power. In 2020, Mr. Trump declined to invite Biden to the Oval Office after failing to accept the results of the election. The meeting means it will be the first time external since 1992 that an outgoing president sits down in the Oval Office with an incoming one he competed against in the election. In the meantime, the president-elect continues to put together his lineup for the incoming administration. Now, earlier today, Trump named tech billionaire Elon Musk to lead a new Department of Government Efficiency with Republican Vivek Ramaswamy. They're charged with drastically reducing government spending, slashing regulation, and dismantling government bureaucracy. And according to Trump, could be the Manhattan Project of our time, a reference to the top-secret effort to develop nuclear weapons during World War II. Musk is likely to have some big controversial ideas, as he has in his career, alongside his co-pilot Vivek Ramaswamy, whose previous proposals have included dismantling the Department for Education and the FBI. Now, according to the president-elect, the job is to be completed by July 4, 2026. Another addition to the new administration will be Fox News host Pete Hegseth as Secretary of Defense. The 44-year-old served in Afghanistan and Iraq and will be responsible for the world's most powerful military in his first political role. Trump has described him as tough, smart, and a true believer in America first. Trump has also picked John Ratcliffe as Director of National Intelligence. In other words, CIA director. According to U.S. media, Ratcliffe had been high on the list of potential Attorney General candidates. He currently serves as co-chair at the Center for American Security at the America First Policy Institute, a Trump-linked think tank. A former representative from Texas served as the Director of National Intelligence from 2020 to 2021 during Trump's first term, and his appointment served as a key argument for critics who believe that Trump was using the intelligence community to serve his political needs. Joining us now is political analyst Sylvester Okiri. He joins us from Washington, right where the president-elect is at the moment. Sylvester, history has been made in the United States. A former president makes his biggest comeback to the White House. He is also hitting the ground running with political appointments. I wanted to get your thoughts on some of the announcements made so far. First, that of Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense, someone who's had no political experience, and then tech billionaire Elon Musk, who will have the responsibility of government efficiency role. Talk about the appropriation of these appointments.
Thank you so much for having me, Amarachi. It's always a blessing to be on your show. Yes, first of all, I want to thank God for the Trump come back after so many issues and things, but God really intervened. Yeah, Trump is somebody I know that I believe is very strategic in what he's doing. We always say American exceptionalism, and to making America enviable, which was part of his campaign, making America great. So all the people he's tapping into are individuals he believes will be able to actualize his vision, which is making America great. Elon Musk and his partner are the kind of individual that we actually need when it comes to government spending. A lot of money have been thrown out. Not only in America, in so many governments today, people promise you so many things, and people are spending a lot of money and so on. Imagine a situation where we have a lot of veterans that are homeless, but we are throwing money away, tax dollars money everywhere. So government efficiency will put an eye on that to make sure that actually those money what being spending. For instance, how can U.S. government be spending tax dollars on overseas promoting transgender, promoting things that are not really important to the American community, that has nothing to do with American community? Places like Africa, Nigeria, we have insecurity, we have unemployment, people are suffering and struggling, healthcare, and so many other things, infrastructure, degradation, and so on. And all you can do is to push money to force people. If you don't take this, our government will not support you or give you aid, which was the same mistake Obama made in his father's homeland in Kenya. And I thank God for Uhuru, who rebuked him diplomatically. And that's exactly what Kamala Harris was doing, going to 3 African nations, promoting nothing but transgender. No one is against those things, against any human being, because personally, I would say if you want to marry or sleep with a transformer or 3, go ahead, do it, but don't force it on anybody. Our Secretary of State, Tony Blinken, has visited Nigeria more often than any Secretary of State. What is he promoting? There are insecurity there, even to a point that one of the time he was, one of the recent one, he was in Nigeria when things are going wrong. He didn't say a word about it, but their goal is just using tax dollar to promote, to push an agenda that is ungodly, an agenda that has nothing to do with helping the countries. I was in South Korea last week. Last Sunday, over 2.7 million Christians came out on Sunday protesting against gay and transgender things like that. Not that they're against human beings, but it's not helping the culture of the community. So Elon Musk coming in as someone who have been campaigning that he will help America save $2 trillion in spending, and looking at his own personal business, a man who has built such a great, solid business, I think tapping into him will help to put an eye, knowing if every dollar spent, what being spending, where is being sent to. So I commend Trump keeping to his word. He's not a pretentious man. He says what he will do and already know the direction where he's going. So I'm so happy that he's not even in the office yet, but he has already presented outstanding Americans that will make America look more enviable than it has been in the last 4 years.
So he's also appointed a few friends to different positions. For example, as Secretary of State Marco Rubio, White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles. You get the sense that he's putting together. Do you get the sense that he's putting some thought?
No, seriously, Marco Rubio. I commend him on that. I commend him on that. Yesterday, actually, I shared on my social media. I commend him on putting Marco Rubio. That's an outstanding individual, a great man, and who loves his country and so on. I think that is good. We may call it putting his friend, which happen anywhere in the world. Anywhere in the world, any president has to put one person or the other, either your political campaign funder or whatever. But we are looking at what are these individuals offering? What kind of policy? What kind of human being are they? Look back, what kind of services Marco Rubio has presented from Congress to Senate and so on. I think they are great. Another one is a ambassador to Israel. He made outstanding appointments, and more are coming. And all of these are targeted towards his agenda, making America great.
So soon Trump will be meeting with the U.S. President Joe Biden, someone that he clearly refused to welcome to the White House when he was elected. What do you make of this meeting, the fact that Trump is being accorded a courtesy that he refused to accord nearly 4 years ago?
Seriously, I don't even call that courtesy, because what Joe Biden has done to him is worse than whatever he want to do to Trump. I think he's even buying a favor. This was a president who was sitting down inciting a lot of attacks, a lot of things done to his fellow president. I'm not saying nobody is above the law, but there are so many things both Obama, Michelle, and Biden have done to this man that I just pray to God, thank God for this comeback. Not that he's revenging, but also Joe Biden is doing what he's supposed to do, invite him to the White House. But don't forget, I always say that media are the ones crafting some of the things going in the world today. We forgot that when Trump won the election, over 55 Democrats in Congress joined the former Congressman John Lewis to boycott Trump's inauguration. That is very hurtful. These people didn't welcome him, and even those who attended the inauguration, they went there angrily. Look at Michelle Obama. Check the pictures. She looks so frowny. Hillary Clinton, all of them, they just want to show up there. So what they've done to the man, and I pray he will not do it to them. And this was a man in his first time, he had the opportunity to throw Hillary into jail, but he didn't do that. He's not mean-spirited like them. He's not high-handed like them. Joe Biden invited him. He's inviting him to say thank you. He's surprised to see Trump win, and he has no option but inviting him to the White House.
Well, the incoming First Lady has refused to honor the current First Lady Jill Biden's invitation. Would you call that a snub, or she just doesn't have the time?
No. Seriously speaking, First Lady Melania has been one of the best First Lady, very calm, she's not a troublesome person. You won't hear anything she say anywhere. If she didn't honor that invitation, there must be a reason. And I don't think it's political or anything. So she's not one of those who, after office, they are still, inciting problem, racism, this and that, and so on. She's an outstanding First Lady, classiest First Lady. Thank you.
Finally, Mr. Sylvester, what do you make of some of Trump's announcements about his first day in office? He says he would reverse, and you mentioned this earlier, he would reverse Joe Biden's gender-affirming policy on children. He also says there'll be changes at the border and also for the economy.
Well, even God himself, the angels, everyone, trees are clapping hands saying hallelujah, because you know what? The Bible tells us that God created man in his image and likeness. He made them male and female. He didn't make them Adam and Steve. He made Adam and Eve. So like I said before, I am not against any human being, whatever. If you want to hug the tree, sleep with the tree, sleep with snake, that's your problem. But let us keep to God's mandate in our lives. It doesn't mean that people are 100% perfect. No. So I'm happy and I commend Trump for that. Even if that is the only thing God called him to do, hallelujah to that. We need to reverse that. We can't live we are adults. There should be an adult in the room when things are going wrong. We are not telling our children to do wrong. We are telling our children that God didn't make us. We are telling our children that God made us something else. So I am so happy that he is doing that. Is he a perfect man? No. Am I? Are you? Nobody. Is Joe Biden the holier than thou? None of them are perfect. But let's call a spade and give honor. The Bible says righteousness exalts a nation and sin is a reproach. So telling people that you are made in another way, especially little children, that is the worst atrocity any human being can do. And I think the next thing I will even say, it is time for Trump or the world to stop allowing people to adopt kids, those who refuse to have children for themselves, not because of medical issue. Then you are adopting children and you are transgenderizing them. Are you trying to teach them about God? What are you telling them to do? So I am so happy that Trump keeps to his word. And we will see in the next 60 days, in the next 6 months, 183 days, you will see what America will turn to be again.
There are some who will argue with you on that, but thank you for your thoughts and your opinion, your analysis on the issues. Mr. Sylvester Okiri, political analyst in Washington.
Thank you. God bless you.
We're still in the United States. Massachusetts Air National Guard member Jack Teixeira has been sentenced to 15 years in prison for leaking highly classified U.S. military documents online. The classified files also included records relating to Russia's war in Ukraine. The 22-year-old was sentenced by U.S. District Judge Indira Talwani in Boston. after pleading guilty to perpetrating what U.S. prosecutors call one of the most significant and consequential violations of the Espionage Act in American history. Tuera, who was arrested in April last year, pleaded to 6 counts of willful retention and transmission of classified information relating to national defense over a leak last year of a trove of classified records to a group of members, gamers, on the messaging app Discord. Let's cross the pond now to the UK, where Prime Minister Keir Starmer says allegations of child sex abuse against a volunteer at Christian summer camps John Smith were horrific, and Smith's victims were failed very, very badly. On Tuesday, the Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby, the senior cleric of the Church of England, resigned in sorrow, saying he had failed to ensure proper investigation into allegations of abuse. The resignation came 5 days after the independent Mackin report singled him out for criticism over his handling of abuse allegations dating back to the 1970s.
Let me be clear. Of what I know of the allegations, they're clearly horrific in relation to this particular case. Both in their scale and their content. And my thoughts, as they are with all of these issues, are with the victims here, who have obviously been failed very, very badly. I'm not, it's a matter in the end for the church, but I'm not going to shy away from the fact that saying these are horrific allegations and that my thoughts are with the victims in relation to it. I think that's very important.
Keir Starmer at the COP29 summit in Azerbaijan. Now, survivor of the alleged church abuse on Tuesday recounted facing repeated violence at the hands of John Smith, the church volunteer described in a recent report as the most prolific serial abuser associated with the Church of England. Speaking to the BBC earlier, Andrew Morse said he was subject to beatings over 4 years, starting when he was 17 years old. Morse said the alleged abuse ultimately led him to consider suicide. Published last week, the independent Mackin report said Smith, a British lawyer, had subjected more than 100 boys and young men to brutal and horrific physical and sexual abuse over a 40-year period. Smith beat some victims up with 800 strokes of cane, supplied nappies to absorb the bleeding. According to the report, he would then drape himself over his victims, sometimes kissing them on the neck or back.
I believe he was a predator, even in those days, was that he picked on a few boys within that group and befriended us, invited us back out to lunch at his family home, and slowly over the years became a sort of father figure to me, in the sense that I've been sent away to school at the age of 7, initially to prep school, and then following that to public school at Winchester. My parents, although very loving and the best parents I could wish to have, were distant. And that was the opportunity that John Smythe saw to infiltrate himself in my life. At around the age of 16, 17, he started introducing to me the notion that I was sinning and that I needed to mark those sins in a form of repentance that really would mean something to the Lord. And his suggestion to that was beatings. He drew on various Old Testament verses to support his argument. And those beatings started for us around the age of 17. On my 21st birthday, John Smythe told me that I was still sinning and that required what he would call a special beating. That was beatings of hundreds of lashes of a cane. And at that point, I realized that I couldn't take things any longer. And I firstly wrote a couple of anonymous letters to Christian leaders and to John Smythe. But when those had no effect, I decided that I would take my own life.
What happens now that Welby has resigned, and when will the new head of the Church of England be announced? Emeritus Professor of Modern Church History at the University of Cambridge, David Thompson, says the resignation of an archbishop is extremely unusual, and the process to appoint a new leader to the Church of England following the resignation of Archbishop Justin Welby could take months.
I certainly can't think of a precedent in the past. I wouldn't have expected there to be a precedent before 1900. It's only in the 20th century and since that it's even been possible for bishops to resign. Usually in the past, if they were moved to a new place, they would simply be translated and their existing tenure would automatically be terminated. But in the 20th century, a different system was developed to ensure a greater say from members of the church and related organizations to have a say in the appointment of anyone new. An archbishop's retirement date is known in advance. It's possible for a number of the preparations to take place beforehand. Whether or not, in view of the necessary retirement date in January 2026, the members of the Crown Appointment Commission have already been appointed. I don't know. There will be some representatives, though fewer than in the past, from the Diocese of Canterbury, and there will be other representatives from the rest of the Church of England and indeed the Anglican Communion worldwide. And unless people have already been earmarked beforehand, that could take a couple of months at least.
Welcome back. There have been explosions across the Ukrainian capital, Kyiv, today, after officials said Russia launched its first missile attack on the Ukrainian capital since August, forcing elderly women and small children to take shelter in an underground metro station. Ukrainians have been waiting for a big missile attack for months, worried that it could deal a new blow to the hobbled energy system and cause long blackouts as winter sets in. Air defenses intercepted 2 incoming cruise missiles, 2 ballistic missiles, and 37 drones across the country, according to the Air Force, but no casualties or major damages were reported in Kyiv. Meanwhile, United States Secretary of State Antony Blinken today met with NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte in Brussels as the outgoing Biden administration seeks to cement support for Ukraine ahead of Donald Trump's return as president. The president-elect Donald Trump, who's questioned U.S. military support for Ukraine, says he will quickly end Russia's war without saying how. Raising concerns among U.S. allies, he could try to force Kyiv to accept peace on Moscow's terms. Now, on Tuesday, the U.S. State Department said North Korean troops had begun engaging in combat operations alongside Russian forces in the war with Ukraine. Blinken told the briefing North Korean involvement in Ukraine demanded and would get a firm response. President Joe Biden is hoping to boost assistance to Ukraine before he leaves office on January 20, as Russia makes gains along a more than 1,000-kilometer front line.
We had a very productive discussion today about our ongoing support for Ukraine in the face of an ongoing Russian aggression. As well, this added element now of DPRK, North Korean forces, injected into the battle, and now quite literally in combat, which demands and will get a firm response. We see increasingly the indivisibility of security between and among these different theaters, the Euro-Atlantic theater, the Indo-Pacific theater, the Middle East. And it's critical that we find ways to work ever more closely together. One of the things that NATO's done in recent years is to strengthen its partnership with Indo-Pacific partners, and we'll do more of that in the weeks and months ahead. We have a very intense and important agenda over the next couple of months, and as I said to the Secretary General, President Biden fully intends to drive through the tape and use every day to continue to do what we've done over these last 4 years, which is strengthen this alliance that's so critical to the security of the United States, the security of countries throughout Europe, and we will do that. And as well, to continue to shore up everything we're doing for Ukraine to make sure that it can effectively defend itself against this Russian aggression.
The VOA's Anna Chernikova is in Kyiv from where she joins us. Anna, let's talk about the attacks today. The explosions were heard across Kyiv. Thankfully, no one died. There have been no casualties reported. But what was it like having to experience this all over again, the first time it's happened since the month of August?
Good evening. Yes, you're right. It's the first ballistic missile attack in 73 days, actually. And this was reported by the local authorities. And to be honest, people just, probably got back to this missile attacks reality. I personally woke up of the sound of explosion. It was an explosion caused by air defense. But still, it was quite unexpected because because it was very early in the morning and a lot of people were still sleeping, and many people did not see the message from the local authorities regarding the ballistic missile threat. But a lot of people actually did and went to the metro station. So a lot of people spent the whole morning there waiting for the air raid alarm to go off. To stop. This time no casualties and no damages were reported in the city of Kyiv. However, one person was injured and a house was damaged in the Kyiv region. But to be honest, Ukrainians were waiting and were expecting this similar attack or this type of attack for a couple of months now, because everyone is actually everyone believes that Russian forces will get back to the missile attacks as winter is coming and as heating season is ongoing already in Ukraine, just to create additional difficulties for winter period.
Yeah, and I can imagine, how that must feel, the anticipation, of these attacks. You're almost living in fear in Kyiv, as you expect. You don't know when exactly these airstrikes are going to come, and you don't know what damage they will cause. But the energy situation in Kyiv, I think, is of utmost concern, because that is where the Russian targets are headed to make sure that this is a really difficult winter for Ukrainians. Are there plans on ground already to shore up, energy supply, to help people live through the cold months?
At this point, Ukrainian officials said that they do everything possible, and this looks like the case that Ukrainian authorities do everything possible to get energy system ready and to prepare the energy system as much as possible, because, of course, we do understand that the damage caused last winter are still visible and are still causing consequences and additional problems in the whole energy sector. So Ukrainians do not expect any outages as it was during winter time last year. right now, so there are no outages which are under the certain schedule. But if such attacks continue, this will be back the reality for Ukrainians, and a lot of experts actually predict that this upcoming winter could actually bring the reality of having at least 12 to 14 hours of outages per day, which of course will be extremely tough and extremely difficult for all Ukrainians across the country. At this point, situation is stable. So the outage, an energy outage, was in action on Monday when it was a threat of possible attack, of possible missile attack, because on Monday it was also a threat that missiles might be targeting Kyiv. However, no missiles were detected in the airspace of Ukraine. This time they were, and Ukrainian authorities made sure that they prevent any huge outages, and there were certain scheduled outages during the day of Monday. However, today, as we're talking, no outages were imposed. So, this could mean that this latest attack was actually repelled by the Ukrainian air defenses.
As we're talking, and I'm just looking at some of the pictures my producers put up, you see more children in the subway station, I guess, hunkering down until the attacks are finally over. Let's talk about what's going to happen in the future, and that's the emergence of U.S. President-elect Donald Trump as he enters into the White House. Does Ukraine worry about America's relations with Ukraine, whether those military aids will continue? Because the incoming president, who's been a former president, is not a fan of this war in Ukraine. He said he can stop it. He hasn't said how, but he's not a fan also of continuously giving military aid to Ukraine. So does that concern the government?
Well, it definitely does, and Ukrainian government demonstrate that they are open for negotiations. They demonstrate that they are in negotiations already with the president-elect, and President Zelensky already had a call and conversation with President Trump. But of course, we don't know what the talk was about, what are the official positions of both sides, between them. So what Trump said to Zelensky, what Zelensky said to Trump. But I can tell you that there is, so basically inside of Ukrainian society is kind of divided into two parts. One part is actually afraid. A lot of people are afraid that President Trump might stop support in order to get Ukraine into the deal that will not be very good for Ukraine, and this is probably the main scare, that Ukraine will have to go under Russian. Under what Russia wants and what Russia desires, and if there is no U.S. support, it will be extremely tough for Ukraine to continue the fight. However, another part of the society believes that President Trump actually can change things, can stop this war. Again, of course, no one explained how, and President Trump did not get into details, but a lot of people here in Ukraine believe that Trump can do that, and that he will actually stop hostilities. And a lot of people remember his term as a president. A lot of people remember that he was the one who gave Ukraine first lethal weapons, and this was the first time U.S. president made such a decision. So there are mixed feelings about President Trump and his future second term. But I think that probably mostly people are hopeful that Trump can actually implement certain changes in this, in the war which is ongoing between Russia and Ukraine, and that Trump will be more decisive in his actions, which could help to end hostilities, to stop the war, because of course Ukrainians, of course they want the war to be stopped, but they don't want to the conditions for that to be too harsh on Ukraine and to just let Russia take over the control of this region.
And one of those conditions, Anna, is Ukraine might have to let go of some of its territory to Russia in order for this war to stop. We'll get your thoughts on that. And as well as Ukraine's dream of becoming a part of NATO, you think that will still be realized, or that could be realized under a Trump administration?
A very difficult question, of course. If we're talking about NATO, of course, this is the biggest dream for Ukraine, because for Ukraine, for Ukrainians, this is the only guarantee, let's say one of the main, it's probably the biggest guarantee that Russia will not start any kind of full-scale aggression again, and that Russia will not be able to get into Ukraine as it did in 2022 and in 2014. So NATO would be the perfect guarantee. However, there is understanding that such procedure is, it could be a very long term. If it happens one day, which is, of course, no one can guarantee either. But if it happens one day, it will take years or decades. Inside the society, there is understanding that it might be, this dream might be postponed during Trump administration. I cannot say that Ukrainians were sure that if Democratic president would be elected, the NATO issue would be resolved immediately. So Ukrainians did not have any, guarantees that Ukraine will be joining NATO if other candidate would win. But Ukrainians, the most important for Ukrainians is to get security guarantees. If it's not NATO, then there are other ways, of course, as well of military cooperation between Ukraine and NATO countries and NATO alliance and the US and other countries separately to actually get this, defense capacities for the future possible aggression from Russia. And I think that for Ukraine, this is the most important. Just if Russia comes back, Ukraine is ready to defend itself, defend Europe, even if it's not a NATO member. So, but of course, if we're talking about NATO membership, at this point, it doesn't really look that it will be real in the short term.
Anna, thanks again for speaking with us. And once again, do stay safe in Kyiv.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, at least 2 people have been killed after an Israeli strike hit the tents of displaced Palestinians in the central Gazan city of Deir al-Balah. Firefighters can be seen battling the fire in at least one of the tents, and what appears to be tins of canned food lying among the debris. The strike of the tents comes as the Israeli military said it had delivered hundreds of packets of food to cut off areas of northern Gaza. Meanwhile, the U.S. says Israel has not breached American laws on blocking aid supplies after a 30-day deadline to give Israel to boost humanitarian aid access in Gaza or risk having some military assistance cut off lapsed. Hezbollah has launched a barrage of rockets on northern Israel, some which were partly intercepted. Officials say a house in the town of Malot Tashiha was hit during the attack, but no casualties were reported. The Israeli army says a barrage of 20 rockets was partly intercepted by air defense systems, and some impact was identified on the ground. In Lebanon, the Israeli military struck the Hezbollah-controlled southern suburbs of Beirut for a second consecutive day. The UN is warning of occurring or imminent famine in Gaza, saying in October alone, over 100,000 people faced insecurity, indicating Gaza is now a wasteland of rubble. Israel's UN ambassador Danny Danon rejected the famine warning by the UN, saying it is simply false, and outlined efforts by Israel to improve the humanitarian situation in Gaza.
The Famine Review Committee has found a strong likelihood that famine is occurring or imminent in areas within the northern Gaza Strip. Men, women, boys, and girls are effectively starving as the conflict rages. Already in October, nearly 133,000 people faced catastrophic food insecurity, and the integrated food security phase classification released on 17th of October warned that under a reasonable worst-case scenario, a risk of famine existed for the whole of the Gaza Strip between November 2024 and April 2025. By the time famine has been declared, people are already dying of hunger, with irreversible consequences that can last generations. The window of opportunity to deliver this assistance is now, today, not tomorrow.
Turning specifically to the situation in northern Gaza, the latest report from the respected and independent Integrated Food Security Phase Classification, the IPC, warns there is a strong likelihood that famine is imminent.
Most of Gaza is now a wasteland of rubble. What distinction was made and what precautions were taken if more than 70% of civilian housing is either damaged or destroyed? Essential commercial goods and services, including electricity, have been all but cut off. This has led to increasing hunger, starvation, and now, as we have heard, potentially famine. We are witnessing acts reminiscent of the gravest international crimes. Our capacity to respond is being undermined, including by the Israeli Knesset legislation to ban UNRWA activities starting in January.
Eyewitness pictures of the flooding in Italy today. Rainfall triggering heavy flooding in Italy. Firefighters beginning operations on the streets, helping flood victims and drivers in Sicily due to the intense downpour. Meanwhile, in Acreol, near Catania, one person was rescued after a swollen river flooded the ground floor of a house where 4 people were living. In nearby Giare, firefighters helped drivers on the A18 highway hit by flash flooding. More than 12,000 people have been evacuated in Indonesia's eastern island of Flores following a volcanic eruption. Several international airlines cancelled flights to and from Bali due to the dangerous ash clouds from the volcano near the Indonesian holiday island. It's not clear now how many flights were affected, but 22 international flights and 12 domestic ones were disrupted as of Tuesday evening. The volcano spewed a 9-kilometer ash column into the sky over the weekend, 1 week after a major eruption killed 10 people. The Bureau of Meteorology is warning that the ash might drift to parts of the country's north today. Indonesia is situated on the Pacific Ring of Fire, an area of high seismic activity on top of multiple tectonic plates, and has about 130 active volcanoes. Final preparations are underway in Sri Lanka. Residents heading up to the polls for a snap general election tomorrow. The country's president dissolved parliament on September 24 to clear the way for the general election. Sri Lanka has 17.1 million voters who are eligible to participate in the upcoming elections. 1 million of them are first-time voters.
Well, the conventional wisdom is that the JVP NPP will get enough seats to govern on their own. So overall majority requires them to get 113. Perhaps they will get 120 or maximum 130. One thing, though, is quite clear. Yes, they should have a majority to govern on their own. However, they should not get a two-thirds majority. And one other thing, as much as we need a strong government, we do need a strong opposition as well. Lanka has been repackaged, he's been branded. So he's done various gestures that have a certain resonance with the population at large, saying, yes, he's heading in the right direction, he's cutting waste, he's going to do corruption, he's going to do all of that. But as I say, they're gestures. Yet we haven't seen what the true face of an NPP government is, and I think we'll have to wait for after the parliamentary election.
Voting is underway in Somaliland's long-delayed presidential election amid political tension in the Horn of Africa. Local media reports hopeful voters are lining up. They're keeping their fingers crossed for a stronger economy and for more jobs. More than 1 million people are expected to vote at over 2,000 stations, with 28 international observers on site. Incumbent President Muse Bihi Abdi of the Kulmiye Party is seeking to clinch a second term, aiming for Somaliland's international recognition. His opponent from the Wadani Party, Abdirahman Muhammad Abdullahi, is promising democratic reforms, while Faisal Ali Warabe of the Justice and Welfare Party is advocating unity government. Since declaring independence from Somalia in 1991, Somaliland has maintained its own government, its currency, security, despite lacking global recognition. The region's recent agreement with Ethiopia for Indian Ocean access has sparked tension with Somalia, which sees it as a threat to its territorial integrity. And here in Nigeria, the French embassy is promoting the need for Nigerians to be bilingual and fluent in the French language, as opportunities for growth and self-development are immense. Recently, the embassy, alongside study organizations and institutions, created awareness at the University of Lagos, where they sought to attract students' interest in the language.
Recent research indicates that a child by the age of 5 can learn up to 5 languages or even more. While many here at the multipurpose hall of the University of Lagos are way past that age, the French embassy, through various professional groups, shows why it is never too late to learn another language, in this instance, French.
Language is a barrier to communicate, but if we want, we can go beyond the language. When I speak my French, you can understand. When you speak your English, you can understand. So we come together under the National Chambers of Commerce to improve the knowledge of our people by understanding the English, French, and Portuguese as official language in West Africa. We need to identify a specific policy on how we can support the regional integration through the language.
Even more so in the armed forces, Superior Officer for the French Marine Troop, Lieutenant Colonel Raphael Chavancy, says learning the French language will boost employment opportunities in the sector and help to further personal ambitions.
Developing French language in the NAF is one of the 4 bilateral military cooperation priorities. If you're thinking to join the military, to serve your country, and to protect your people, I want to show you how learning French language could boost your career, make it more interesting, and make you more efficient. As you know, and as it has been said before, Nigeria is surrounded by French-speaking countries, and it is always useful to speak the language of your neighbors, especially if this language is also worldwide practiced.
As the event draws to a close, representatives from the French Embassy, Campus France, and Alliance Française highlight benefits to learning a second language.
I have to interact on a daily basis with embassies, international organizations who are looking for bilingual staff members. And it's unfortunate that sometimes they have to start with people who have some skills and then train them for them to learn French, when we have people who are already studying French. Then, of course, we have all the different private companies. French companies, but not only Francophone companies. They have opportunities in Nigeria They also have opportunities in West Africa. There are a lot of exchanges between France and Nigeria, so also opportunities in Europe. So a lot of opportunities for people who speak French.
We all know the French language it brings about bilateral relations because Nigeria is surrounded by Francophone countries. So it's a very veritable tool when it comes to, mediation, diplomacy, and then even you have many French countries and French organizations in Nigeria. So, and the knowledge of this language is very, very important. Is a door opener.
The French language is very, very vital for you to thrive in businesses within and around Africa. So French up your career is also important for students to know that not just about learning the French language in school, is also beneficial for your career in the sense that aside Africa, other countries of the world where French language is obtainable.
The opportunities are endless, they say. And with Nigeria surrounded by French-speaking countries, it behoves on her citizens to parler français.
That'll be all on The World today. Thanks for watching. I'm Amarachi Ubani.